Good evening, Holt Public. We're going to give it a couple minutes as people are entering our webinar. We now have 47, 52, 57. Again, we're going to allow a few moments for everyone to get situated in the webinar. Kevin, would you be able to go out on Facebook and post the link? It appears that I see we have 167 and growing in here, but there are some people on Facebook that are looking for some help.
We'll head right over there.
Okay, Holt Public, thanks for your patience. Looks like we're still loading some people in. We understand that a link that was out there may have not delivered people to the right location. So we have our tech director who is out posting the proper link. And we're still growing. We're up to 188. I'm gonna give it one more minute just to ensure that we allow access to everyone. I will also commit to having you out by 8 o'clock. We're nearing 200 participants. And it's 7:04. Good evening, parents, guardians, and members of our learning community. I'd like to start out with an apology. It sounds like the link that was posted may not have allowed everyone access. We're up to 212 and growing. So if you are one of those families that tried to get in earlier and you were unable to, I greatly apologize for that. With that, prior to hearing more about our return to in-person instruction plan, I'd like to share some opening comments. I'd like to thank each of you for your ongoing support. This journey has been difficult. We are best when we are alongside and in front of our students. Our training and experience has been focused on improving our pedagogy. To that end, suddenly last March, we asked you to help us switch gears and support your students and our staff in a virtual delivery. On behalf of my son and all 5,550 kids in our district, thank you for making the difference each day by supporting your students at home. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. And that is exactly what we've done for the past 10 months. And that is what we will continue to do. We'll continue to move forward. You are greatly appreciated. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of our central office team and countless internal stakeholders who have been working to develop the Holt Public Return to School Plan. As you know, this plan has been modified several times. Collectively, I would like you to know that we worry about the well-being of our students. Our focus since the fall has been on the well-being of our students and staff. The opening of the Peak at the Week for the last 31 weeks, and you're like, why doesn't he change it? It has been focused on providing mental health support and resources to you so that you have those resources in your inbox. We continue to worry about our adults as well. As a result, we've invested in what is called an employee assistance plan to support our faculty and staff. The EAP, as it is known, provides supports to our employees 24/7, 365 days a year. In the end, it's been hard on our students, our parents, our teachers, administrators, and Board of Education. Throughout this pandemic, the health and safety of our learning community has remained our highest priority. Fair questions and concerns have been raised that deserve a response. In November, I shared that 855 students were back on campus, engaged in some form of in-person activities, including receiving in-person instruction, accessing our Wi-Fi labs, attending childcare, or participating in athletics. Today, 688 are back in or will be back in some form of in-person activity this week. Since August, members of the Holt Public Learning community have visited neighboring districts serving students in person to learn more about how to reopen, keep our students and staff safe, and how to implement the return to school plan. We look forward to the day when we can welcome our students, large scale, back to school. We'd like to highlight that families can choose to keep their children at home for remote instruction if that is deemed a better fit for your family. We are better together, and remember, please wear a mask, avoid large gatherings, and wash your hands frequently. While we are meeting with you tonight, we have engaged with over 1,100. We're up to 1,100 stakeholders this week. Today, the count is 255 on this call and growing. And at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Jessica Cotter. Jessica Cotter is the Executive Director of Curriculum and Staff Development, and she serves primarily our secondary systems. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, David. All right, I'm going to share my screen after that wonderful introduction. Thank you. And my goal over the next 30-40 minutes is to get as much information to the community as possible about where we are with our thinking on the secondary system. So this would be junior high and high school. For those of you that attended the board meeting on Monday, some of the information will be similar, but a little more detail, a little more substance to it. So some of the general, sorry, get down. Sorry, my cat. Some of the general topics we're going to cover tonight, the goals and commitments of our reopening plan, the return to learn, return to school plan and protocols, as well as where you can access those if you would like to review them later. The weekly schedule, I know there's a lot of curiosity about what that will look like. We'll spend some time discussing what that is and why it is the way it is, as well as our next steps. So let's dig in. So we do have a transition plan. It's an internal document, meaning we don't necessarily publish it, but I think it's important that people know about this document. It's a living document. As a former government teacher, I like that term to use. We used to refer to our Constitution that way. But as a living document, what I mean is it's constantly evolving and adapting to new information. It's how we keep track of what our next steps are, and how we keep ourselves grounded in, anchored in certain philosophy and goals for the district. So I'm going to go through with you kind of the pieces of what we have lined up as we move towards bringing students back in person. But the plan in general isn't a set of dates. It's more like a checklist to ensure that the transition to in-person goes smoothly. So a couple important things about this, and this has definitely been the year where we've all got to practice that skill of flexibility and adaptivity. Something that's been important to us is balancing that adaptivity with consistency. We know it's hard on families when things change. We know that it's hard on our staff when they don't know or what to expect or what's happening. So we've tried to be consistent. A lot of our priorities have been around focusing on relationships, community building, ensuring that our students and staff feel taken care of. And a part of that has been a commitment to ensuring that everyone feels safe. And that's been a big pillar of the decision making that we have made. So as we start the conversation around bringing students back into the buildings, we've spent a lot of time focusing on protocols. What would it look like? How would we keep everybody safe? And I've had staff and community say, what are you doing to protect me? And I want to go through some of those specifically tonight because we put a lot of time and energy into designing those protocols. So the commitment to a safer environment really comes from this goal of valuing our relationships in our community and making sure that we, do things the way that we've committed ourselves to. So committing to that safe environment includes, you can see a little list at the bottom of the slide here, a shortened day, and I'll go through with everyone why we have a shortened day, fewer transitions for our 7th through 12th graders throughout the day, using that personal protective equipment, including mandatory masks. And we'll talk about masks a little bit when we get into the PowerPoint more. Maintaining remote learning is an option. We're committed to that for all students. And then having every other seating at lunch or more spaced apart seating, as well as a soft start and a soft dismissal. I'll also explain what those are when we move through. An important part of this whole process has been feedback loops. And I know that taking another survey is probably not on the top of your list of fun things to do, but it's really valuable to us. We sort that data, we review it, we use it to tweak our decisions and our paths. And we have those feedback loops to try to cast a broad net to get a lot of voices at the table. We also have parent support groups, our HEAT parent support groups, that any feedback that we get from that leadership, as well as our teacher leadership and our HEA. So we have lots of different feedback loops that we're constantly trying to attend to as we think about our plan to get back in person. One document that might be very valuable as you're processing what this means for Hope Public Schools is our return to school roadmap. This document can be found. I just want to show everybody so that you can access it and read through it at your leisure. If you go to our website, in the upper left-hand corner is this back to school reopening badge. Click on that. And within that space is a reopening plan and metrics dropdown. Within that dropdown, you'll see all our metrics dashboards, but you'll also see this reopening plan 12821. I just updated it today with the most updated food service guidelines. So thank you, Evan, for helping me through that. So if you click on that, you will see the plan itself. In a minute, when my internet is ready to display it for us, I will walk through the pieces of it with you. So if you go to page 2 of this document, it begins this Model 2 in-person instruction with stringent safety protocols section, like that peach heading. We'll go through the gist of what we're looking at for in-person instruction. The protocols are linked within there. So if you, and actually, what would probably be easiest for everyone is to get the protocols right here, because then they open as a PDF for you in one spot. So the reopening plan protocols are right there. That goes through like entrance and exit of buildings and the mask expectations and the health and cleaning in the buildings. So those protocols might be helpful if you're interested in seeing those details. It also has just kind of the details around instruction that we will reduce the number of targets, learning targets, and still do those to proficiency instead of hitting the same number, maybe not as substantively. And in the classrooms, there's a setup. We're doing walkthroughs this week to ensure the setup where the desks are facing the same direction as far apart as possible, and that the personal protective equipment for students and staff is in place in the classrooms and ready to go. So as you access this plan, it'll walk through the cleaning details, and then there's a section kind of for each department. So supporting teaching and learning is the curriculum office materials there. Special education, there's information there, technology. So I encourage you, if you want that more details after tonight's time to go in and review that plan. So that will be always the most updated. We try to make sure if there's any changes, we add it there. I just added today that PDF of the protocols so you can read through those in detail. We've tried to be very transparent about social distancing. One of the variables, we'll talk about this more in the PowerPoint too, but one of the variables that will really impact social distancing is how many families want to come back face to face. So there will be a survey going home potentially early next week, asking parents and guardians to commit their families to remote or in person for a 4-week period. And once we have those numbers, then we can really let people know exactly how many students we're expecting in classrooms. And it'll give us a better idea for how many students would be on buses as well. So social distancing, we've always said to the extent feasible. I think it would be misleading to say students will be 6 feet apart at all times. We want to be honest about that. But again, we won't know exactly what that will look like until we know the number of students returning. So feel free to look through that. I'll go through a lot of it again as we go through this process. So the protocols I just referenced are embedded within that plan. You're welcome to look through them to give you examples. One is the district mask protocol that should be sent home to you with the survey, so you'll get to read through that. It is expected that students and staff wear masks at all times when they are in person. Of course, there are medical exemptions and there's a form that you'd get signed and approved. But there's also face shields that can be worn with the masks if people would like to do that. There's also on these protocols a cleaning checklist, a lot of work from our facilities director. So I appreciate him and all the time and effort of coordinating the cleaning of the classrooms and buildings and what materials we'll use and whatnot. So those protocols can be found right on that website where I just directed you to look through if you're interested. I have had questions about the desk shields. The desk shields at the secondary level will be issued to students when we begin in person. The desk shields will travel with the student throughout their day, and then they will leave them with their teacher the last hour of the day. There they will be cleaned and sanitized and ready to pick up again the next morning. So what we didn't want to do is have students take them home and maybe accidentally forget it at home or leave it in someone's car. Or this way we can guarantee we have one for everybody every day. Each building will also have their own exit and entrance protocols. I just went through that with the high school today. Your building principal will share with you when they send the survey home, the entrance and exit protocols as far as when to drop off, when to pick up, what door to use. And so you'll get that information along with the survey so you can make the most informed decision possible on whether or not you're going to choose in-person instruction. So the part that I've gotten the most questions about is the weekly schedule, and we are going to share that tonight. I'm going to share that tonight. I really want to remind everybody that this is still a work in progress, and it's hard when you start seeing some permanence and some decisions. It's hard to remember that this is a collaborative conversation with a lot of different stakeholder groups. So for the 7-12 schedule, it's a complex interweaving of work with the transportation department, food service, teachers, administrators, and then other support people, our security and all the staff it will take to make the schedule work. I would hate for people to see this and, take a picture with their phone and say, all right, we got it. This is what's happening, because it may still change a little bit. I don't know for sure. It sounds like it's in a pretty good spot, and that's why I felt comfortable sharing it with people tonight. But just a word of caution that you don't just think like, okay, I'm taking a picture, we're all done with it. So it is still a negotiation. As was shared on Monday, there was a lot of thinking that went into this schedule and a lot of variables that made it very tough to put together. It was like a puzzle, and I like puzzles, but it was one of those puzzles that you get to the corner and it's all black pieces and none of them fit together. But we did manage to get something that seems to work at this point. Over here on the left-hand side in the green here, some of the pieces that contributed to this. So I have heard feedback where people said, well, let the kids who want to be remote stay remote, and the kids who want to come back, come back. And one of the struggles we ran into with that, with the schedule, is originally we were thinking, well, we could have some teachers be remote teachers and some teachers be face-to-face teachers. Turns out especially with the high school schedule, we have a lot of classes taught by one teacher. So band, for example, is Mr. Emerson. Our AP classes, a lot of our electives are taught by one teacher. And that teacher has to either be remote or in person. So the schedule gets pretty complicated, especially at the high school. And so we, after a lot of conversation and in surveying of our staff, decided we wanted to keep our students in their current classes with their current teachers on their pathway that they have chosen. And what that meant is our classroom teachers will have to teach in person as well as remotely at the same time. Since there's only one section of, whatever course it is, they have to do both at the same time. So that kind of impacted the way we thought about the schedule. We also wanted to provide food to students on site. Breakfast and lunch will be free for all students. I'm pretty sure I asked Evan that today. I would hate to say it and have it be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he agreed with me that would still be true. We needed to find a way to keep the hallways and the common areas free, cleared up, not have congestion in them as students moved to lunch or to classes. We also want to provide transportation to students. That was a commitment that we made early, in that we felt that it really created a more equitable situation for all students to be able to access transportation. So what that meant is the junior high and high school share a bus run. Our K-6 students share a bus run, and our 712 students share a bus run, which means that 712 shares a schedule. And that was tough too, because there are some nuances in the building that are different, but in the end, because of the bus runs, we really needed the schedules to run about the same. Now, on side note on that transportation, I believe that families will receive letters fairly soon with pickup and drop off times. So I'm pretty sure Mr. Galbraith also said that information will be in Power School for families as well. So watch for that. We know we have some special programming, especially with the high school students that have an AM PM day. Wilson Talent Center is one of those programs. So we know we needed to run AM classes in the morning and PM in the afternoon so that students could still attend those special programs. We wanted to make sure there were fewer transitions in the day. And we, of course, know we need 6 hours a day of access to teachers. Lastly, just thinking about the fact that teachers are doing both remote and in person at the same time, and it's something that they've probably not done in their career. We wanted to honor that's a big task. That's a big thing to ask of people. And so something we've been working hard to do is to increase the amount of time teachers have each day to plan, give feedback, grade materials, get materials uploaded into Google Classroom, work together on upcoming assignments and all that. All of those variables together created this draft. So I'll kind of walk through it with you. You'll notice each day starts at 7 and ends at 2:05. That's the gist of the school day for our teaching staff. But you'll notice the days start differently. Monday and Thursday are the same schedule. Tuesday and Friday are the same schedule. And that's because of that AM PM that I talked about at the last slide. The AM classes, PM classes needing to happen in the morning and the afternoon. And if we want to run only a 3-hour day to reduce transitions, we have to have a morning version and an afternoon version in order for our Wilson Talent Center kids and other students who are in programs to make it to those programs. You'll also notice the soft start. I highlighted those in a light green color there, as well as the soft dismissal. Those are created so that students, when they get to school, can go straight to their classroom instead of spending time in the hallways by their locker, in the commons, where what kids do when they get to school, loiter around a bit. But now they'll go straight to their first hour on Mondays and straight to their 4th hour on Tuesdays. That'll give them a space to be where they're distanced, and we can keep kids from bunching together in the hallways. You'll notice lunch is on the schedule for now, and so is breakfast. It doesn't say it exactly on there, but during that soft start, every day students can grab some food and sit distanced in the commons or the cafeteria, depending on building, and eat their breakfast if they would like as well. You'll notice a portion of each day is remote. That's where we tried to build in a little extra time for our teachers to process, plan, give feedback, work with their remote students, what they need to do during those hours. And then Wednesdays are also remote. we've had teachers ask, like, can I come in on Wednesdays? Am I supposed to be there? Like, the big thing about Wednesday being remote is we'd hope to sanitize the buildings, and that is easier if there's no one in the buildings. So we do have a sprayer that does some magical sanitizing that we're hoping we can use on Wednesdays to get the buildings really clean in the middle of the week. So there are a lot of variables to this schedule, but I hope that it's at least noted that there's a reason for every piece of that schedule that is a little bit awkward. You'll notice on the slide, it does say there will be no lockers. As of right now, in the past, our junior high students have shared lockers, and at the high school, the lockers are built one on top of each other. So like literally kids are on top of each other trying to get to their lockers. So we thought it would be safest and best if students didn't access their lockers. It would also help them get to class in a smoother transition as they're moving from one class to another, which means students will be able to carry their backpacks from class to class. We're going to ask them to hang them on the back of their chair. The expectation too is that students would bring their Chromebooks to school every day. There will still be some learning happening through the Chromebook, attending Google Meets. During that soft start and that soft dismissal, students also will have the option of meeting virtually with a group they need to do work with, or with a teacher, or take a test they missed. So that soft start, soft dismissal, I almost think of that as like a homeroom, or work, a study hall, like a time for students to do some of that independent work they need to do. So there is some flexibility in the day with those times, as well as long as they arrive during that time, they'll be on time for that instruction. Okay, I think that's the gist of that. So I mentioned a little earlier, there will be a survey. It doesn't look exactly like this. It's been edited a few times by those giving us feedback. But as soon as that schedule I just showed you becomes finalized, it will go home to you with this survey, as well as some other documentation to help you decide on the 4-week commitment to either be in person or to be remote for that time. Those surveys and all that information will come from your building principal, since there are some nuances in each building that are a little different, number of entrances, all that. So make sure you watch for communication from your principal. Timeline, there's one thing that I could wish right now is just some clarity on, maybe some clairvoyance on dates. This has been a tricky one for us. The timeline we've developed is more of like chunks of time when we anticipate that certain things will have happened. We have been basing our decisions on the health metrics. The good news about the health metrics is they're looking good. We're trending in a good direction. And I have a feeling, as much as that's worth, that we are in a place where in-person instruction is in our sight. So when we send that survey to families, while it won't have an exact start date on it, please know that the wheels are turning to get us in that direction. So we have committed to our staff that we will create a safe environment, and we've created safety protocols that were built around an understanding of the metrics being in a certain place when we implemented them. At this point, I feel pretty confident we're in a good spot to get there before too long. So hopefully the survey that you get, you can kind of keep in mind that while it doesn't have a date on it, it won't be too far out in the future. We are looking at a phased reentry into the district. People have asked about an orientation for kids who've never been in the building. So our kindergartners, our 5th graders, our 7th graders and 9th graders have never been in the building this whole school year. So our plan is phase 1 to bring them into the building first for a week. And for the little kids, that would be TK, K, and maybe even 1st grade. We're still working with principals to determine that. But so they would have a whole week to learn the building, have an extended orientation where they can meet all the people that are there to support them. And it also gives us a week to try out our safety protocols, help our staff get used to the new norms while we tweak if there's anything we notice. So like I said earlier, adaptivity, flexibility, we're going to try these protocols for a week and be responsive to the feedback that we get. So we are hiring positions. If you want to be a long-term sub for Holt Public Schools, just give HR a call. We are looking to bring some new people on board. So if you know anyone, we're open. We also, as I'd mentioned earlier, are looking at the current metrics. For those of you interested, I don't know, I look at this data a lot, but there's two websites that I use the most, My Safe Start Map and COVID Act Now. And they have some pretty clear trend lines as far as where the data is headed. Again, like I said, it doesn't give me an exact date, but it does give me hope. There is a link to the newest data on the website I showed you earlier, right under that reopening plan. I feel like I'm talking a lot. I don't usually just talk by, like, there's usually other people or questions, or, but you know, I guess you guys just get to listen to me tonight. So I have had a couple teachers say, hey, we need to make sure parents, when they go to, or guardians, when they go to make this decision about in-person or remote, that they understand that instruction will look different. It won't be what it was a year ago. And some of it is that remote and in-person at the same time dynamic that we're learning. So I created this slide as a way to be as transparent as possible about if you're in person, and I believe that Mr. Bobidi and Mr. Willard will both be sending out videos of the building, so you can actually see what classrooms look like, you can see what the cafeteria looks like, you can get a feel for what everything looks like, but the desks are spaced apart. Typically at the junior high and high school, there's a lot of group work going on. There's a lot of projects, there's a lot of hands-on. That's, you know, been my experience in the buildings in years past. That won't be the case, that there will be a lot of kids sitting, you know, a certain distance from each other, that there will be masks the whole time. I did include a link on this, which I realize is not a lot of help to you because you can't click on this, but there are free masks available through the state of Michigan. If you just Google Michigan free masks, there's a article that was published with a link right in it for sites to pick those up. As I said, there are no lockers, that backpacks and jackets will be carried around. There'll be an expectation for Chromebooks and chargers every day. For my own students, I was thinking about, I'm gonna have to make sure that somehow it's identifiable that it's theirs, like a piece of masking tape on the charger with their name and maybe a little piece of tape on the bottom with their name, but they're gonna be using them in class, and you know those chargers all look the same. So note to self, that would be something they need to bring every day, preferably charged. I mean, we will have the ability for students to charge them in school, but last time I was in the classroom, there was always a mad rush 6th hour for everyone to plug in their cell phones. Like by the end of the day, they were running out of juice. So my recommendation would be to charge those Chromebooks the night before. There will be desk shields that students will use in every class every day. In the classroom, they may be in a remote environment. I know that sounds weird, but I may be, as a student in a classroom, in a Google Meet with my earbuds in that the school will have to provide if you need some. And my peers who are at home are engaging in that Google Meet with us. Or there may be times where it's live instruction and the teacher is either recording or has streaming through their Google Classroom to the students at home. So the in-person experience will just be different. But that also, on the flip side, that is the remote experience will be different. When we come back in person, teachers will be dividing their energies between those two spaces. So the remote students will follow the new schedule as well. They will have time during those remote hours to still connect with their teachers, but the instruction will happen on the new schedule. And it'll just be different because they'll be experiencing sometimes live instruction with that, where there's students in the room. We will still have those weekly learning plans. And I've heard lots of parents say that's kind of really helpful each week to see that learning plan, and students. They say it's easy, it's nice to see it and know what to expect each day. So we're asking teachers to still continue to develop those learning plans for students. I also included this, and if it's not exactly right, Evan, correct me, but I have that the remote students will still be able to pick up a 5-day meal box every Wednesday. There is pre-registration, and more information about that will be coming. So we will still get food to our remote students, just as we are committed to doing that with our in-person students. All right, almost there. You're almost done listening to me talk. What you can expect very soon, a survey. So you're gonna get that survey soon. Every family must complete the survey. If you don't complete the survey, there will be someone calling you to ask you about the survey. So make sure when you see that link go live that you complete that. Unfortunately, you will have to complete a separate survey for every student. because they are in different buildings. So since the survey goes out by the principal, if you have a junior high student and a high school student, you would have to fill one out for each of them so that their principal has that information. There will also be some protocols going home to you. There will be a Q&A document by grade level. So we're working on those right now. So the junior high will have a Q&A document specific to their building, similar questions, but specific answers to their building, and the high school will have their own. Both of them will also send you, besides the masks information, the entrance and exit information, lunch information, any information about the desk shields, hallway expectations, and then, like I'd mentioned earlier, that video of the building. I think you'll also receive separate information from food service and transportation. I don't know if they will send it you specifically to your home. I think transportation will. Food service, it may be on our website, so you'll want to watch for that. Lastly, and also very important, is who to contact with questions. So this is a lot of information, a short amount of time, and it will continue to be a lot of information, and we definitely want you to feel comfortable and informed. So you can always ask me questions about the 712 systems. I do try to keep the information on the hpsk12.net reopening 2021 space updated. I'll put the Q&A documents on there. I'll put everything on there. Also, my email is jcotter@hpsk12.net. So you're welcome to reach out to me if you'd like. Mr. Willard and Mr. Robita said they would be happy to also answer questions specific to the building since they aren't presenting tonight specifically on their unique circumstances. They said they're open to you contacting them if you have questions specific to the building. And then if you are interested in a childcare question, there's a website there for you. And then human resource guidance in the reopening plan, their protocols do have questions, or I'm sorry, they have information about quarantine, if a student becomes sick, those types of questions are in those Q&A documents. That was a lot of information. Did I forget anything? You guys, did I leave anything out?
I think you did great,
I
Jessica.
got it all. That's a lot of stuff.
I think you did great. Hey, let's pivot now. I'm going to ask a few questions. By the way, public, thanks for joining us. And if you entered late, I apologize if you found a link that did not land you here initially. We are over 315 participants. That'll bring our total outreach this week to over 1,400 people that we've engaged with. So thank you for joining us. To that end, I do apologize that you may not have been able to make it from the beginning. This will be posted. It'll be on our YouTube channel probably tonight. So if you know someone that wanted to see it, please direct them there, and I'll be publishing these in the Peak at the Week as well. To that end, Dr. Quinlan, Human Resources Director.
Hello.
Will there be at the door temperature checks for all kids every day? And what is the sick policy?
So good evening. We will not be conducting at the door temperature checks for students. All families should be conducting home screenings on students before sending them to school. Please do not send students to school who are sick. Thermometers will be available and utilized to check any symptomatic students or staff. If a student is found to have a fever or other COVID-like symptoms at school, they will be sent to the isolation room and parents notified for immediate pickup or contact at the high school to send them home. The ill student cannot return for 10 days and symptom-free for at least 24 hours, or a negative COVID-19 test and symptom-free for at least 24 hours. And again, that would all be based on no known exposures to COVID-19.
Thank you, Dr. Quinlan. Next, we're going to move to Kevin Galbraith. He is the Director of Information and Technology Services. Kevin, this one's, it's a heavy question. Can our district network handle all in-person students and staff being on a device at the same time, as well as can we video conference at the same time? And I know that while my particular iPhone is not on, it may be like asleep, I think it's still somehow engaging with the network. So it's possible that everyone's going to have a Chromebook and a handheld device with them. What do you think?
Well, I would love to tell you that everything is going to work perfectly. That's the way it's designed, and in theory, that's the way everything will work. We know that in practice, things sometimes aren't as we thought they were going to be. So while we do have a state-of-the-art network, all of our equipment is, 2 years old or newer. It's all currently available. If you wanted to buy the same equipment that we have, it's for sale. And we do have a wireless access point or an antenna in every classroom. So we have a network that was designed to support a one-to-one environment with every student having a Chromebook or some other device. But we've never had that many devices on the network. It wasn't until just maybe 6 months or so ago that we got close to having one-to-one. So we'll see how things go. But we believe that we're going to be able to support all of the devices, whether they're bring your own, your own mobile device or smartphone. You can't see mine because of my virtual background there. But every device gets an address, so we should have no issue issuing addresses to all the devices. If everything's on and running, we do have a very strong connection to the internet out through Hingham ISD and the StarNet network that connects all the districts in the county. So we believe we're going to, be able to weather the storm of having, 6,000 devices on the network at once. But until that actually happens, we won't know for sure. But in theory and design, we should be good. And we also are working on some professional development, sort of go-to guides for teachers on what to do if they see performance lags and network slowage, usage like that in their classrooms. Things like turning off your camera on your Chromebook when you're in the classroom, so that you only are sending an audio signal out to students who might be learning from home, and until you're called on by your teacher to turn your camera on so that your peers in your class at home can see you. So we're working on some of those things as well, but we think we're going to be good.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate your thorough answer. One thing's true, the pandemic has brought us closer to a more flexible mindset. And I know that if the computers aren't functioning the way they're supposed to, you and your team will do whatever it takes, as you did this fall, to make it happen. So thank you for your leadership with that. We're going to move to Rick Brown. He's the director of our facilities department. Rick, since March, you have been securing PPE, personal protection equipment. And then when someone comes forward and says, this is the thing we should have, you have tried to figure out a way to see if it fits in our system. What type of PPE will we find in our buildings?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Hornak. As you said, for 10 months, we've been purchasing, and up until a week ago, we've been purchasing different things. Some of the innovative things we purchased were the Kaivacs that are sanitizing and cleaning for restrooms and tile areas. Really great machine. We were able to purchase one for every building, which is a big deal in my world. We've also purchased UV lights that you run across the floors at the wrestling rooms that kill 99.8% of anything, COVID included. We purchased plexiglass for the teachers, some of the teachers and the secretaries, face shields, masks. We also purchased sprayers that are sanitizing sprayers. We have 11 handheld, one for each building, and then we have 3 large ones, so that if what happened in March, we'll be ready next time. We'll be able to hit the buildings within 1 day. It took us about 3 days in March. We're ready to get it done in 1 day. So, and on top of that, hand sanitizer and tons of masks. Thank you.
Sounds like you're ready to go. Thanks, Rick. And I would like to note that you were ready back in August and September and October. We just continued to add quantity to everything that you had. And then when that new innovative Kaivac machine became available, you said, yep, we're going to go for that too. So wonderful. So we're going to move this conversation to Melissa Stewart. She is our Director of Special Education. Melissa, we heard a lot from Jessica tonight, and the plan has evolved. We had a plan in in the summer, and it was approved by our board, and then it needs to be approved monthly moving forward, and it has been modified and modified and changed and modified. So with all of that, what does all of this mean for students with disabilities?
Sure. So along those lines, I think one of the questions that I hear a lot right now is my student still going to get special ed services if they are remote versus in the building? And what does that look like in either way? So rest assured, special ed services and supports will be provided whether your student comes back to the building or remains remote. At the secondary level, students can expect to follow their regular schedule, just like they are right now, whether they're in person or remote. If they're in the building, some students might be pulled for services like OT, speech, or social work, so they might be working in a small therapy office setting. Those staff will follow the same disinfecting procedures as our general ed teachers are following. So if we are working in a small group, that space would be disinfected before the next group comes in. Some students will stay remote and may need some of those services while they are home. Some students might have services in the afternoon when they're at home. So in that case, please stay tuned. As Dr. Hornak said, and as Jessica said, we're constantly revamping, and once we kind of have a better idea of which students are coming into the building, some of those itinerant services like speech and OT, they will be able to work on their schedules and get with you so that you know when those services can be provided.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate that. I'm going to move to transportation. Our transportation director is Donna Schultz. Donna, I'm aware that you've been transporting kids for a decent part of this school year. How's it going, and what do we expect? Should we expect the ability to social distance on the bus? Do we have to wear a mask?
Yes, we have been transporting students. Effective this week, we are transporting 51 to various schools within the district. Social distancing is not possible on the bus. Mask wearing is required on the bus, and that has been going very well up to this point. We've had no issues.
Wonderful. Couple things for our public to be aware of. If we were to try to social distance our buses, our capacity right now is 77. While we don't believe we'll put 77 kids on the bus, to properly social distance based on 6 feet and what have you, we could, our new capacity would be 13. And to run our routes with the number of buses that we own and the number of drivers we have, our pickups would start at either 3:30 in the morning or 4:30 in the morning. And that's just not humane. So unfortunately, we will be mandating masks, but we need you to know that social distancing on the bus is just not possible. And if you think about it another way, our bus drivers, the teachers of that classroom, are actually seat belted in with 2 hands on the wheel with their students behind them. So we're going to be needing our students to self-monitor and make sure they keep that mask on. So, yeah. Anything else, Donna?
No, that covers it. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. Okay, Evan from Food Service. Evan Robertson is our Food Service Director. Evan, will meals be provided for remote students and on Wednesday for in-person students?
Yes, so students who choose to stay remote will be able to pick up a 5-day box similar to the Monday night pickup at the high school. There will be a registration link for that, and all that will be shared as we get closer to a start time. For students who are face-to-face, they will be offered breakfast and lunch. The difference for 712 versus K6 is 712 will be going to the cafeterias, eating in the cafeterias. Cafeteria seating will be every other seat. There will be 1 entree choice in the sandwich line for students. When we come back for starting, there will be no snack bar, no a la carte lines. We will evaluate that though as time goes on if things change. And then finally, for the in-person students, they will have the ability to, on Wednesday, to get a breakfast and a lunch. We're looking at utilizing most of our buildings as a pickup site, and then also running our food bus at 3 different stops to make sure we get each end of the district covered.
Nice comprehensive answer, my friend. Thank you. We got a few more minutes. We're going to roll it back to Dr. Quinlan in our HR department. Dr. Quinlan, what is the process for possible COVID exposure or a confirmed COVID-19 case in school?
That's a good question. Hope Public Schools takes guidance from Ingham County Health Department, Barry Eaton Health Department for obviously Diamondale, and the CDC as to when teachers, staff, and students need to quarantine or isolate. All protocols will align with the current public health guidance, including if the exposure is considered close contact and any other details to determine next steps. Families should contact the school if they have a concern regarding potential exposure or question. If a student is confirmed positive, the school does need to know, or if a student has had close contact with a confirmed positive case. Whole Public Schools will work with the public health departments for contact tracing and inform all impacted families, including potential directions for quarantine or procedures.
Thank you. Okay. Jessica, I'd like to thank you for your comprehensive, very well thought out presentation. Is there anything else you would like to share just in passing? You know, sometimes you think, I wish I would have said one more thing.
I don't think so. Just a reminder to you check the website for all the stuff that we've been talking about. We'll upload it so people can access it as they process.
Good. I do have some final thoughts. Folks, I would again like to apologize to those that were unable to, on your initial click, find us with help of our amazing tech team, especially Kevin Galbraith. He was able to get that link out on Facebook and shared accordingly to make sure we could get you all here. At its high, we had 315 participants, which brings us up to 650 people that we talked to today. Again, over 1,400 engagements this week. Through a partnership between the Ingham County Health Department, Ingham ISD, CARE ATC, and SETSEG, educators across our area gained access to the COVID-19 vaccine recently. School districts currently offering in-person instruction have been prioritized to receive the COVID-19 vaccine in our county at the MSU Pavilion. Many have already done so. Those that are scheduled to return before us were then next in line, and those vaccines started last week and are continuing this week. As a result, districts offering in-person instruction at a future point will have that opportunity in the near future. I'm happy to share that our staff received their registration link yesterday. But I'd like to be clear. Those who are signing up for the vaccine from the health department as a member of the 1B vaccine category do not actually at this point have scheduled appointments, but we are in the system. With that, I am aware that a large number of our faculty and staff have either had their initial vaccinations or are scheduled to receive their first vaccination this week. While I had dreamed and hoped and prayed that our entire district would have been vaccinated by now, or those that wish to be by now, I believe what has occurred organically actually strengthens our organization. As you know, we've had to modify our thinking, change, and learn throughout the last 10 months. I've been reading a great deal about best practices for organizations in scheduling of vaccines. Why would I? Well, because this is important to Holt Public. In the end, staggering the vaccine appears to be one of the best practices as it avoids potential side effects impacting the entire organization at the same time. Finally, our childcare staff and others who are serving students in person are being vaccinated this week through the ISD and the health department. I'd like to thank each of you for your ongoing support. This journey has been difficult. I may have said that more than once tonight. We are best when we are alongside and in front of our students. Throughout this pandemic, the health and safety of our learning community has remained our highest priority. We look forward to the day when we can welcome my child, your children, back to our large group, large scale instruction in person. We would also like to highlight, and we need to say this multiple times, families can choose to keep their children home for remote instruction if that is deemed a better fit. In the very near future, probably early next week, you will see a survey, and it's very important that you take the time to respond to that. And please fill out a survey for each child in our system. As those surveys are going back to building leaders, for those that fail or are unable to respond to the survey, we will do outreach. We will reach out to those families so we have a better handle on how many students are returning to face-to-face instruction. And finally, for the second finally, we are better together. Please remember, you are part of the solution to getting our kids back. Please wear a mask, avoid large gatherings, and wash your hands frequently. As promised, we'd have you out by 8 o'clock. It is 7:57. Be well, everyone. Thanks again. Take care.